Okay, good evening, everybody. So, we're going to talk about connecting with integrity this evening. Before we begin, I always like to sit quietly with the audience just for a couple of minutes, watch our breath, clear the mind out from running around all day, so that we can really listen and share this evening. So, if you'd sit up straight, put your hands in your lap. Yeah, and lower your eyes. And then become aware of your breath. So you can watch your breath either at the nostrils or at your belly. Just be aware of the in and out breath without forcing or manipulating your breathing in any way. If you get distracted by a sound or an idea or a physical sensation, just notice it, but then come home to your breath. And as you're breathing, be aware of how the breath is changing all the time. It doesn't remain the same from one moment to the next. So let's do that just for a minute or two. Let the mind settle by focusing on one object, in this case, the breath. And then before we begin, let's take a moment and cultivate our motivation so that we know why we're here and what our purpose is. And so let's have a motivation that wants to learn, that is open-minded and eager to share, and sincere in wanting to become wiser and more compassionate. And so, by our sharing together this evening, may we learn so that we can make a positive contribution to society and to the lives of all living beings in the present and also in the future. And so with this way, cultivate an attitude of care and compassion for others and a wish to be of benefit and service to them. So, connecting with integrity. First, before I start, I wanted to acknowledge that we're on the land of the Native Americans and that they are sharing this land with us so that we have a sense of appreciation for that. So, connecting. We usually think connecting like online. I'm connected, I'm not connected. Okay? Here we're talking about connecting with living beings. And I think connecting means that we're really listening to what other people say because we're interested in their experience, we're interested in what they're thinking and feeling, and we care about them. Okay, so I think listening is a big part of connecting, and then learning to speak too, and to speak what's appropriate, what's truthful, to speak at a time, at an appropriate time, and in an appropriate way. And so that enables us to really connect with other people. Okay, so I'll come back to this in a minute. I'm just kind of trying to lay out the words that we'll be using so that we're all on the same page. And then connecting with integrity. Okay, in Buddhism, we talk about two mental factors. One we translate as integrity, or sometimes we call it self-respect. And another one that is called consideration for others, or sometimes it's translated as decency. I'm not sure which term is better. Okay? But these two are very similar. Yeah? With integrity, we abandon harming others and we abandon non-virtuous actions because we respect ourselves, we respect our own word, we respect our values, and we want to live by our values. Okay? So integrity has to do with knowing what our values are, cherishing them, yeah, knowing that when we say something, it has impact, and we want to be the kind of person that we ourselves can respect. Okay? So, living with integrity involves being aware of what we're thinking and feeling, what we're saying and what we're doing, and monitoring those and adjusting accordingly so that we don't harm others and we don't go beyond our own values. Okay? Is making some sense to you? Not many people speak about values and integrity these days. Okay? So integrity has to do with having ethical conduct and cherishing that and wanting to live accordingly. The other one, the consideration for others, is abandoning destructive actions, non-virtuous actions. But here, it's not because we cherish, not because we have self-respect, yeah, but because we know that our actions and our words and our thoughts and our feelings affect other living beings, and we care about them. Yeah, so we know that what we say and do and think has an impact. It's not just going into empty space. And we care about the impact we have on others. We don't want to harm them, and we don't want to act in ways that make them lose faith in humanity. Okay? So there's a lot to say about these three things. Yeah, if we think about connecting with integrity and with consideration for others. Okay? So let's go back to connecting a little bit and explore it some more. So like I said, it's really being able to connect to others with our heart because we care about them. Yeah. So automatically to do that, we have to respect ourselves and we have to have consideration for others. Yeah. Nowadays, it seems like with the internet that because we can create false identities, you can just call yourself anything you want to, that there doesn't seem to be much responsibility for what we say and do. And so that enables people to say whatever they think, whether they really think that or whether they have a motivation just to be belligerent and vent. Okay? So this, I think, is the danger of especially social media, is that we can say and do things that we don't have any responsibility for, and where we don't have to look at a live human being and see their response to what I say or do. We can just bleh, all over everything. Yeah. It's really like vomiting sometimes on the internet, isn't it? You know, when you troll people, it's like, I'm just going to get my anger out and like say anything I want to, bleh, and I don't have to look at where all my negativity is landing. I don't have to be responsible for it, and I don't have to care about the effect that it has on other people. Okay? And so communicating in that way actually isn't communicating, because for me, communicating means that you say things in a way so that the other person can take it in. When we are blah, we don't care about whether somebody can take it in. We are just caring more about relieving our own tension and thinking of ourselves as a big shot who can terrorize other people by what we say. Okay? And, dare I mention, this is modeled perfectly by our Commander-in-Chief. If you don't agree with me, get your tomatoes ready. You can throw them anytime you want. Okay? But just think about it. You know, it's really with, you know, communicating involves telling the truth. Yeah, and that has to do with having integrity, to know that I respect myself for being truthful. To say things that we mean, again, because we want to respect our own word, and we want other people to know that we are reliable and responsible human beings. So we're not just speaking because we want to put something out, but because we really want to communicate with somebody. So we want to be truthful. Mm-hmm. So no fake news. Yeah. we have to be wary of fake news, but let's not add to it. So let's not say things that we don't mean and say things that we know aren't true. Yeah? And to not exaggerate, yeah, but to really speak truthfully. And then to speak in ways that bring people together instead of dividing people. Okay? Because I think what we all want is to live together harmoniously. Yeah, do you want to live in a disharmonious world where people are fighting all the time and calling each other names and at each other's throat? Yeah, I think we all want to live in a harmonious world. So we are responsible for making that world harmonious. Yeah, and we're responsible for holding other people accountable for their behavior when they speak in ways that aren't true and when they deliberately create disharmony. Okay? So, not trolling, not, when I think of because the Senate again reaffirmed today that the Russians are interfered with our election in 2016, and they're interfering with the upcoming election, and we may not be internet hackers ourselves, but do we respect other people? Yeah, and are we communicating truthfully and in ways that bring people together instead of saying things that we know will cause friction? So this starts not only in our social discourse, yeah, in society, but it also starts at family dinners. Because we know our family members' sensitivities very well, and we know how to push their buttons. I can see some people nodding. Yeah. So, of course, we're thinking about how they speak, disrespectfully and without, to cause friction. But what about us? Yeah. Do we sometimes push people's buttons just to get a reaction out of them? Because we know what they're sensitive about? So it could be our parents, it could be our siblings, it could be our friends or classmates or office mates. Yeah. Let me just see how I can needle somebody. Okay. So, again, that's not speech that's going to connect us. It's divisive speech. And then harsh words is another kind of speech that isn't going to connect us. It's going to divide us. Yeah, so harsh words is when we insult people, yeah, when we ridicule them, when we tease them, when we call them names, when we falsely accuse them. Again, in ways modeled by the leaders of the country who are supposed to be the people that show the populace a good example. Okay? So I think, in many ways we can't look to our leaders to lead us in having good civic discourse. We have to lead ourselves and be examples for others. Yeah? And let the leaders know that we aren't pleased with their behavior, that we expect more of them, that we expect decency. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then idle talk is another thing that can interfere with connecting with people. So idle talk is just blah, 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 about any old meaningless stupidagios that we talk about to waste time. Okay? So to really connect, to speak truthfully, to speak in ways that bring about harmony, to speak in ways that encourage other people and point out their good qualities, and to speak in ways that are respectful of other people's time and energy. In Buddhism, part of our practice of speech is to point out people's good qualities and to praise them. Yeah. Do you make praising other people and encouraging them part of your day-to-day life? Yeah. Do you have the intention every day when you wake up in the morning? Yeah. To praise those with good qualities and to encourage people in what they do well? This should be something that every morning when we wake up, we use as part of our motivation so that we can be very aware of our speech and how we communicate with other people. Mm-hmm. I used to not think about that so much, and praising others was a little bit scary for me. I would praise them when I wanted something out of them. Yeah, you know how we do that? Oh, you're so this, you're so that, and, by the way, can you help me with X, Y, and Z? I'm just thinking of how that was exercised this last week. Yeah, if you read the transcript of the call, with Ukraine, flattery, and then do something for me, okay? And we speak the same way to our friends. We use people, okay? So we flatter them because we want to use them, yeah? So abandoning that and instead, really training our mind to look at people's good qualities and point those good qualities out to them and point them out to other people, so that instead of speaking badly behind somebody else's back, we speak well of them. Because that creates trust, it creates harmony in society. Yeah, instead of being jealous of somebody and then going and, ruining their reputation by gossiping and saying all the things we don't like about them. Okay. And then encouraging people. Yeah, because we all need encouragement, don't we? Yeah. Do you like when other people encourage you? When other people kind of say, yeah, you can do it. You have the ability. You have the talent. Give it a try. Don't be afraid. And so we like when other people encourage us. And so likewise to encourage them. And when I started to really try and practice this, pointing out people's good qualities and encouraging them, my feeling going around my daily activities completely changed. Yeah. Because instead of just like, yeah, this person did this and they did that and I don't like this and I don't like that. Why do they do this and why do they dress like that? When we talk like that, it's like it puts our own mood down. Yeah? When we praise and encourage people, we feel happy. Yeah, I used to not do this because I was afraid that they would be better than me if I praised them. But then I realized, actually it's good if other people are better than me. I don't have to be the best, because if I were the best, we're in pretty bad shape. Yeah, because there's a lot of things I don't know how to do. So I'm very glad there's people who are better than me. Okay, so connecting, by being aware of how we speak, by being aware of what we do, and that involves having integrity. Okay, so knowing what our values are, and then having part of our mind monitor what we're thinking and feeling, what we're saying and doing. Okay? So this part of our mind that monitors, it's called introspective awareness. And so this is, if we wake up in a bad mood, this is the part of our mind that says, I'm in a bad mood today. I better be really careful of what I say and do. Yeah, because what do we say and do when we wake up in a bad mood? Okay, yeah. So, it's like ringing the little alarm bell of, okay, today I have to be careful because I woke up in a bad mood. I need to work on my bad mood and try and shift my attitude by seeing goodness around. And I need to be especially careful of what I say and do, because when I'm in a bad mood, I tend to be reckless. And then I say and do things that later on I regret. Yeah, and things that cause disharmony and hurt feelings. True or untrue? Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we can monitor our behavior and really, change it when we need to. And sometimes, we might be ready to speak and then go, whoops, I better keep my mouth closed because I was about to insult somebody or criticize them or whatever it is. Yeah. So monitoring and then having self-discipline. Yeah. And when we learn that self-restraint, it's not self-restraint where we tie ourselves in knots, so I can't do anything. It's rather a self-restraint that prevents us from doing things that we regret. Yeah. So it enables us to be a lot happier. Yeah, because we aren't just acting like jerks, if you know what I mean. Yeah, because sometimes I don't know about you, the way I behave is so obnoxious, but I think I'm just being a big shot. But actually, people are horrified. I'm not making friends when I'm obnoxious, put it that way. Okay, so really monitoring that. Okay, and then with the consideration of others, really being aware of how our words and our deeds affect other people. Yeah, when we pass on rumors and we say things that we're not sure if they're true or not, how does that affect other people? Yeah, especially if we say something and then it winds up not to be true. And as we all know, that once something is put out, it's spread out there, then it's hard to extinguish false things or fake. When we are agents of fake news, even if it's the fake news about what's going on in our family. It's hard to later take it out because people hear it and then they talk to other people about it. So being, aware of how our words influence other people and caring about that. And when we yell and scream, at children or at the people that we love the most, how is that affecting them? When we yell and scream out of anger, are we creating trust or are we breaking trust? When we break trust, is it any surprise that people don't trust us? When we have harsh speech, why are we so surprised that people back away from us? We're the ones who put it out there. So we have to be careful of that kind of thing and see how our speech affects other people. And, in our country today, it's like people have no self-restraint and no real consideration for others, especially on social media. You say whatever you want, under whatever name you want, and you don't have to see how your words hurt somebody else. And especially, when it's called trolling, isn't it? When everybody dumps on somebody. And, we hear stories of that. People picked out for whatever reason, and then everybody just sends them hate messages or death threats or insults. And you just send it on, just because you feel like airing your anger or just for the fun of it. And yet, how does the person who's receiving that kind of stuff online feel? We don't have to look at their face. So, I think, and especially young people, because the whole way of social media and people figuring out if they're popular or if they're not popular according to what people write on their Facebook pages, that can be really dangerous. Because I remember hearing some time ago about a middle school girl, I think, who killed herself because of what people put on her Facebook page. I mean, that's a little bit extreme reaction, but, it shows that we need to be careful of what we say. And so this whole thing of thumbs up and thumbs down, be careful about what you click. It affects other people. When there's a space to write comments on a talk you heard or an article you read online, speak from a place of wisdom and care, because it's going to affect the people that read it. Okay, so this is connecting with integrity has to come from a place of caring about others and caring about ourselves. And in Buddhism, one thing that we really train in is seeing that everybody wants happiness and nobody wants suffering, and we're all equal in that way. And if we spend some time really contemplating that, then we don't want to harm others, and we also don't want to say things that will wind up harming ourselves by making us lose our self-respect. Coming back to connecting. At the beginning, remember, I said connecting. The first thing I said about connecting was being able to listen. Yeah. The second thing was being able to speak truthfully and harmoniously and encouragingly and appropriately and kindly and so on. Okay? So what I see happening now in society too, because I know there was some mention of tribes. It isn't in the title of the talk, but in your introduction you mentioned that. Okay? So it seems to me like in society we're really dividing into tribes a lot and creating a lot of identities. I belong to this group and I'm this kind of person, and you belong to that group and you're that kind of person. And so getting quite attached to our identities and then insisting that other people treat us in a certain way based on our identity. Okay? And identity politics, they call it, I think. But it's more than just politics. It's creating identities and then latching on to them. Yeah? And yes, we have identities. They're conventional identities. Yeah, we are citizens of a certain country. We are a certain race, a certain ethnic group, a certain religion, a certain educational level, a certain socioeconomic level, a certain gender, a certain sexual orientation. We have all these different identities, okay, conventionally. But I think what I see happening now is that people are getting very attached to their identities. Yeah, I am this. Yeah, and you better treat me properly, and you don't understand me because you don't understand my identity. Okay, do you see this happening around you? And then, everybody is like, okay, I have my identity, and other people don't understand me, they don't share my experience, and so I become really super sensitive to all these microaggressions that show people's bias and ill will and prejudice, and I'm ready to let them know that they aren't respecting me and they don't understand me and they have to change. Okay, do you see this happening? Yeah? Is it pleasant? I don't find it very pleasant, to tell you the truth. Like I said, we have identities. But the problem isn't the identities. The problem is getting attached to them and developing and reifying, solidifying our self-image and our image of others. Okay. In Buddhism, we train to let go of identities. So this whole thing of identities now is really quite puzzling for me, because for the last 40-odd years, my practice has been letting go of my identities and my attachment to my identities, and instead learning to see that we all share one identity as a sentient being, as a living being with consciousness, who feels pain and pleasure. And we all are in that same group, wanting happiness, not wanting pain. Yeah, wanting freedom, not wanting confinement. We're all alike. There's no difference in that way. And so, if I know that, then I can look into everybody's heart and understand them and understand where they're coming from. Because I know that that's the most important thing to them, is to be happy and to not suffer. And they may find happiness in various ways. They may want to be free of different kinds of suffering. Yeah. And so that may be different according to different life experiences and different groups we belong to. But the basic thing of wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, that it goes across the board and applies to everybody in all identity groups. Yeah. And so when we really focus on that, then, like I said, we can look into everybody's heart and know the most important thing about them. And if we do that, then we don't have to worry so much about, do we fit in? Do they like us? Do they appreciate us? Do they know what my identity is? And are they going to respect me? Because our focus has shifted from me and my happiness and my identity and you got to respect me, to the other person and all living beings who want happiness and not want suffering, who are just like me, and my behavior influences them, and I care about them, and I want to not harm them, and I want to contribute to their well-being. Do you see the difference in focus? Yeah? One, just emphasizing me. Yeah, and do you understand me? And I can't make you understand me. Yeah, how can I make you understand me? But I can make me try to understand you. Okay, so that's what I have to do, is open my mind and open my heart and try and understand you and where you're coming from and what's important to you and how you look at life. Because if I can spend time doing that, then I can speak appropriately and we can connect. Yeah. If I'm only focused on, are you respecting me? Yeah. Then it's a disaster. Yeah? I mean, look at our own lives. When we only focus on how other people treat us, yeah, we become so hypersensitive to every small thing that we're constantly miserable because nobody measures up to our standard of how we think they should relate to us. So we put all the responsibility for our happiness on other people instead of being responsible ourselves for understanding others' experience and knowing how we affect them. Is this making some sense to you? Yeah? When I first started learning about this, it was the hard way, okay? And because I wasn't aware of how much identity people were separating out into different identities. Yeah, who you support politically and every other identity you could think of. And when I tried to talk about we're all being the same and wanting happiness and suffering, at some of the talks I gave, the people in the audience would get so mad at me. Really, they got so mad. You're not respecting my identity. I'm scratching my head going, but for 40 years, I've been training my mind to look beyond identity and to look into people's hearts and to not get locked into, stereotypes of people from different groups. And I tried to say this to an audience of college students. They would not accept it. So interesting to me. Yeah, so interesting. So I don't know. You're holding on to your tomatoes so far. Yeah, although a few people have walked out, so I don't know. But, I still feel the need to talk about how we are alike and not how we are different. Yeah, because it's true. I can't understand everybody's personal experience, and you can't understand my personal experience. But we can understand each other's experience that is similar to our experience. Yeah, and the what do you call them? The either neuropsychologists, neuro-somethings, okay? They've done, excuse me for my poor scientific vocabulary. I used to know all these terms. Yeah, I studied science, but many moons ago. That we have, what do you call them? The neurons, what? Mirror neurons, okay? So that when we see other people experiencing something, we can understand from our own experience something similar to what they're experiencing. We don't know their precise life experience, but we can know something similar because we've experienced something similar. Okay? And so if we recognize this and allow ourselves to realize that other people do understand something about our experience, and to make it our job to try and understand something about their experience, then we can communicate. Mm-hmm. There was a very excellent book I read. What was the name? Strangers in Their Own Land. Okay? I don't know if you've read it, but I highly recommend it. It's written by I think she's a sociologist or an anthropologist from Berkeley, who really wanted to understand the people in the South and how they were looking at their lives and the country. Yeah, and so she went to live in Louisiana part-time every year for a period of years. And she got to know the people and the culture there. And because she was really puzzled, for example, why people did not care about environmental pollution, even though it was happening in their own backyard and making some of their own communities uninhabitable because some of the oil companies or industrial companies were dumping pollution in the, how do you say it, bayous? Bayous. I wasn't raised in the South, so excuse me. Okay, and wow, these companies are dumping all this pollution in the bayous, okay, and yet the people who live there don't want the EPA to regulate companies. Why? What's going on? And so she went there and she got to know the people. And what she got to understand is the people relied on these companies for their jobs. And if the EPA came in and fined the companies, or limited, set up regulations, environmental regulations for the company to follow, it could endanger their jobs. And for them, their job was the most important thing because that's what enabled them to stay alive and support their family. So they trusted the companies to self-regulate more than they trusted the EPA to set good regulations on the companies. I thought that was so interesting, because I don't think that way. But when I read the book, I thought, okay, I can understand. She also went to the churches of some of these people, because it's quite a religious area. And some of the people, when the subject of the environment and pollution and so forth came up, some of the people they just said, God will take care of it. God, if this is God's will, this is God's will, God will take care of it. And so, again, they didn't, care about regulating any of these things. Now, I don't view the world like that God is going to take care of everything. I think human responsibility, because we're the ones who created the problems, so we better try and solve them. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, made up a little skit, where the God and the Buddha are talking, and all these people are, praying to God, and they're praying to Buddha, please fix this, please make that happen, please, correct climate change, and please stop war. And God and Buddha look at each other, and they send the message down, you guys created the problem, you fix it. And that's what I think we have to do. Because, prayer is nice, but prayer alone is not going to fix it. But for these people, they sincerely believe that. So I have to respect, okay, that's their worldview. It's different than mine. But I have to respect it. And, it would be very interesting for me, I'm curious, to really talk to people who think like that. And how they, I'd like to understand better how they think. But anyway, so what this person from Berkeley did, which is, the most liberal part of the country probably, was very, very helpful in explaining the situation of the people there, and especially about the immigrants, and I find it so interesting because now the economy is such that we don't have enough people to do the jobs. So having legal, letting some of the undocumented people become legal citizens so that they can legally work and pay taxes and so on would be a real benefit to the country right now, because there's a lot of jobs that aren't being taken, and especially in agriculture and so on, that are really difficult jobs. Most people who were born here don't want to do those jobs, and, immigrants are, they're willing to do anything. My grandparents were immigrants to this country, and they did anything, just to be able to support the family. And we need those people, and they also need fair pay and to not be exploited. So in some way, the people who don't want immigrants, it's like, I don't quite understand when we need these people for our economy and when the crime rate is actually lower for immigrants than it is for people born in this country. And when except for the Native Americans, all the rest of us are immigrants or, descendants from immigrants, aren't you? Yeah? We're all descendants from immigrants. This isn't our land. Our ancestors, for most of us, our ancestors came here and they took the land, So, why this attitude towards immigrants? And in the book, she explained, which I found so interesting, she gave an example of like a whole line of people all trying to climb a mountain. And you're in that line and you are working hard and doing your best to, climb step by step to get up that mountain. To the top of the mountain is the American dream, okay? And you're trying to get there. And you see people coming into the country or people who have been here, minorities in the country who have been here generation and generation. And if we look at the African Americans, this country was built by their labor to a large extent. And then the people who are working hard, but are not getting a lot of money, are somewhere on the hill, climbing up, not very high. And then they're seeing the people who they regard as lower than them, the minorities, the immigrants, and so on, getting aid from the government. And that really raises their rackles? What do you call it? They get mad. Hackles. What are hackles?
Like, I think when the fur on an animal climbs up, when they're like getting angry or agitated, it stands up.
Uh-huh.
Those are hackles.
Those are hackles. Okay. Yeah, I know the expression. I'm never sure what's a hackle. Okay, I know what a cackle is, but not a hackle. Anyway, yeah, so they get upset about it. Yeah. And it was really eye-opening for me to see that, because how people compare themselves to the people who are a little bit under them and don't want those people to get ahead. Whereas I would think, that the middle class would look at the very rich people and say, you guys are getting an unfair share of the wealth. Are you getting what I'm saying? It's like I would think people would look up and say, you people are not paying your fair share of taxes. And the companies are getting welfare. Every time we give companies tax breaks, that's corporate welfare. But we don't call it corporate welfare. We call it doing wise business. But it's corporate welfare, isn't it? It's like people pay their taxes and then the governments give these corporations a tax break. So your tax money is going to the corporations. And then they pay their CEOs, I don't know, over 200 times what regular people make for a living. So anyway, I would think that middle class would look to this 1% and say, hey, that's not good. But they don't. They look to the people just below them and say, we don't want you people to get any welfare because it's not fair. We're working hard and the money's going to you. But when they work hard and the money goes to the corporations, they don't care. Yeah. But, when I read about this, I thought, oh, okay, now I understand where it's coming from, because when you work hard, you don't feel real secure in your position. You're afraid somebody else is going to come take over your space. Yeah. So it really helped me to understand where people are coming from and why people think the way they think. Hmm? So what I'm getting at, my point is, to really try and open our minds and talk to people who think differently than we do, and talk to them because we really want to understand their perspective on life. We may not agree with it. That's okay. We don't even agree with ourselves sometimes. Yeah, do you always agree with yourself? Or do you fight a civil war inside yourself sometimes? We have internal civil wars all the time. So, we can live with not agreeing with everybody. Yeah, but this way at least we can understand where they're coming from. Yeah. So, and it's very interesting to talk to people who have very different backgrounds and who think differently than we do. Yeah. I remember I travel a lot, so I meet different people on the plane sometimes. So I was talking to one woman once, and she was Jehovah's Witness. And I learned, that in that faith, the women are accountable to the men, and the men are accountable to God. And she was telling me that because her family, she and her husband had converted to become Jehovah's Witness, that before that they used to quarrel a lot. But once they became Jehovah's Witness, she just went along with everything he said, and then the disharmony in the marriage ended because she just went along with whatever her husband wanted because that's what the religion said to do. And I was sitting there going, oh my goodness, it's like, that's the last thing I would do. I mean, I'm not married, but if I were, that's not the kind of wife I would be. Yeah. But here was somebody else who thought different. She was happy with it. Yeah, she said her marriage is so much better now. Okay, she's happy with it. I have to rejoice for her and respect her decision that she was willing to sacrifice all of that. And that's her choice. And, that's fine. It works for her. Yeah, but men out there, don't you go trying to tell your wives to become Jehovah's Witness now. Okay? Yeah. Okay, but my point is, if we open our minds and see our similarities, then, that we're all similar in wanting happiness and not suffering, then these other minor differences, we can accept it in some way, and we can see it as interesting. Yeah, so instead of seeing people as, dimwits and whatever else we call them nowadays, they're just people who think differently than we do. Okay? But again, I think we really need to look for the people who are supposed to be leaders and supposed to set examples for this country and hold them accountable to acting like better citizens, and to set that example for them ourselves. Yeah? Okay, so we can have some questions now and comments. Yeah.
Respectfully, as conscious, sentient beings, do we not have responsibility to other conscious, sentient beings? I see right now, my background, my identity, I guess, is sort of science-based and I'm rather linear. I see climate in crisis. I see 80% of species looking at extinction. I see people that don't have that background denying. I see children being kept in cages down at our southern border. I show up here locally, not anything big deal for me. It's just, I feel a responsibility to go to my senator's offices. I feel a responsibility to go to climate walks. I'm maybe one of a couple of hundred people here. I know there are others. I speak truth to that power every single day, and I'm outraged, and I don't feel respectful, and
You're frustrated and you're angry, right? Yeah, and you want your voice to be heard. Yeah, you need your voice to be heard. Yeah, so, I mean, this is, so this is totally understandable, yeah, and I agree with you completely. I mean, we're responsible and we need to hold other people responsible, but the whole idea is, how do we communicate this? When we're angry, we don't communicate very well, and we usually turn people off. They can't hear the content of what we're saying, because all they hear is the anger. No, because I agree with you. Okay? But if I were somebody who didn't agree with you, I might have heard it differently. Okay? Yeah, you didn't call any names, you just voiced your frustration, which is totally understandable. Yeah? And like I said, I feel the exact same way. Yeah? But I don't want to make the climate change deniers, I don't want to make them into enemies. Yeah? Because they're sentient beings who want to be happy and don't want to suffer, and they're blind, or because of what, either they don't believe science, or they have faith in the companies that will self-regulate, or who knows what their view is. They have some reason for it. Yeah? And if there's a way to dialogue with them, yeah, and a way to point out in a kind way so that they can take it into their hearts, yeah, instead of being in an adversarial way. And so here I'm thinking about His Holiness the Dalai Lama, whose country is occupied. It's been occupied since around 1949, 1950, and he continually tells the Tibetan people, do not hate the Chinese, who are the people who occupied their country and are destroying their culture. Because he says it's not it's coming from the people in the Communist Party, it's coming from the higher ups. Don't take it out on the average citizen. Yeah? And don't even hate the people who are the higher ups. Yeah? Treat people with kindness, treat them respectfully and with compassion. And so I think, in all the activist work we do, that we have to cultivate that attitude. Yeah. And give ourselves some empathy for our own frustration. Yeah? And give ourselves some empathy. And know that there's other people who support what you believe in. And that, we all need to work together for this. Okay? And one of our nuns, this one here, Venerable Jampa, you can connect with her. She is very passionate about climate change. Okay? Aren't you? Yeah. And so she goes to marches, because the whole Abbey can't go to marches, but she'll go as a representative for all of us.
Could you explain to me the difference between the woman you spoke with on the airplane accepting her place in the hierarchy of her religion and you accepting your place in the hierarchy of your religion?
I don't accept my place in the hierarchy of my religion.
You should maybe get a new uniform.
I don't accept my place in the sense that I want equality for everybody, and gender equality in particular, in religion. And religion is always the last thing to change. I mean, I studied history in university, and it just blew my mind because religion talks about all these noble things and equality and love and compassion, and religious institutions are the most conservative in society. It's mind-blowing. The religion itself is so liberal, the religious institutions are so conservative. Okay? Go figure. So, I cherish the religion. And, I am practicing the Buddha's teachings. And the religious institution was created by human beings. My loyalty is not to the religious institution, it's to the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha's teachings are perfect. Religious institutions formed by ordinary beings are not perfect. Okay? So when in Rome, act as the Romans do. That's what my mother taught me. So when I'm in the Tibetan community, I act, basically like I'm supposed to. But here in the West, we can set up an abbey in a different way, where there's gender equality. Yeah, and that's nice. And with my Tibetan friends, when I'm not in a public situation, then I can speak more freely about, what I think about the gender hierarchy. Okay? But I want to keep peace with the people in the hierarchy because, you know what? They're not going to change because I want them to change. Yeah. I mean, they're Tibetans. Most of them are refugees who left Tibet in 1959. They know very little about the rest of the world, and what I think doesn't matter beans to them because I'm an outsider. So I accept that, and I start something in the West where we can do it our way, but practice the same teachings. Okay, but just have the way the institution is set up be very different. Does that answer your question okay? Sure.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you.
So, okay, so, going to earlier in the lecture, when I was younger, I used to get really angry at some people who would call me names, but now I laugh when they call me the names, and I'm really just know that they're joking around, but when I was younger, my feelings would get hurt about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was wondering if that would be like changing or adapting to it and just getting used to it.
Yeah, I think when some people call other people names, they're saying more about themselves than they are about the person they're calling names. Because when we call somebody else a name, when we, insult somebody else, we're revealing our own bad intentions and our own bad character. We're not really talking about the other person. Yeah, we're actually making ourselves look bad when we do that. So, the way I look at it is there's somebody who has some suffering inside, and they think that by calling me a name, that will relieve their suffering. It won't relieve their suffering. And I also realize that their calling me a name has nothing to do with me. It has to do with their suffering. And that if another person were there, they would say the same thing to the other person. That if they call me a name, they're not talking about me. They're talking about whoever happens to be in front of their nose at that moment. And they're not even talking about that person. Like I said, they're talking about themselves and showing, their bad character. So I think best ignore it. Or you know what else I do? Is I make a joke out of it. And I'll say, you're right. I really am like that. And then make, some kind of joke. And say, so that I make light of it. I show them that I'm not really taking it seriously. Does that make some sense? Yeah? You had a question?
Sorry, I brought the microphone over.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I don't know if there's an answer to this question because we're kind of in unexplored territory with the internet.
Could you hold the mic?
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a correct answer to this question because we are in unexplored territory with the internet and all that stuff. But throughout history, I can see a common theme of places where people gather to exchange ideas. For example, the American revolutionaries gathered in bars. People have gathered on campuses, churches, public squares.
Yeah.
And I feel like now a lot of that is done through the internet. And I feel like it's being attacked by, if it's trolls or Russian bots or, radical ideologues or whatever. How would you suggest we defend our public thought space from these type of people without falling into being belligerent as well? I guess that was my question.
This is an excellent question. I think, first of all, by being wise ourselves and knowing how to relate to the media and not letting the media control our lives. First, before we can counter them, we have to protect our own minds so that we don't become like that. Okay? And so, take yourself off Facebook. I know you're going to have a heart attack when I say that. Yeah. But seriously, consider it. If, first of all, do you really need to know what your friends ate for breakfast? It's not that important. And all this other kind of stuff, So it's a lot of it's a waste of time. Take yourself off of that. If there's groups that, can have a quality dialogue online, participate in them. If somebody starts acting out in the group, call them on it and ask that the group be monitored. Usually groups have monitors, and ask the monitor to step up and, let that person know that what they wrote is not suitable. Okay? Yeah? Yeah. Oh.
All right. So I have people in my life that I care about that hold dissimilar beliefs than I do, for example, on climate change. And I find myself losing that or not being able to retain that respect I want to have for them because things that they believe contribute to the human suffering that we want to extinguish. Do you have any advice for retaining that respect?
Yeah. Think about their kindness. Yeah. Instead of focusing because they probably aren't going to change according to what you say. Yeah, is that how you feel? Yeah. So sometimes we aren't the right people to say things to them. Sometimes they have to hear it from somebody else. But if you want to keep a good relationship, instead of focusing on the things you don't like about them, focus on their kindness. And especially family members, if it's your parents, how they've raised you, their kindness and taking care of you when you were a child and making sure you got a good education and bringing you up to have some manners. So, look at their good qualities, remember their kindness, and in that way you have a positive feeling towards them. Okay? And know that you're not alone. Okay? I think many people here have that in their families. In my generation, it wasn't climate change that divided the families, it was the Vietnam War. And boy, was it difficult in some families. Yeah? But the country made it through all that. And I think we stopped the war. People my age, don't you think by protesting we stopped the war? Yeah. So, you guys, I'm all for what the younger generation is doing and standing up and saying things. Really, it's wonderful. And we're counting on you. Yeah. So don't be, you want everything to change quickly. It doesn't change quickly. That doesn't matter. You keep at it. Yeah. And don't let your own values be co-opted by money and status and climbing the corporate ladder. Hold your values. Yeah. And speak your truth. Okay. Yeah. And then afterwards, somebody up here has a question. Yeah.
When we talk about erasing individual identities and instead replacing that with, a united, universal identity, what do we do when we're faced with problems of oppression towards a specific identity? How do we combat that kind of, oppression or intolerance toward that without talking about the identities themselves? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
What you're asking is, when we experience ourselves prejudice about the identities, the conventional identities we have, or even we see somebody else experiencing prejudice because of their identities, how do we handle that? Yeah. I think you say something politely and firmly. Okay? Yeah. Or if you're in a situation and you see somebody being actively discriminated against, you step in and become an ally for that person and help them. Does that answer your question okay? Yeah. Here.
Who is it?
So when you guys wear red, does it actually symbolize and represent something?
At the time of the Buddha, saffron color, which is kind of like a golden color, was considered ugly. And so all the people who were wandering mendicants at that time wore that color. And so the Buddha's disciples also did. When Buddhism went to Tibet, as I heard it, they didn't have the dye to make it a golden color. So, but if you look at strands of saffron, some of them are this color, so they made it this color in Tibet. Yeah. Okay, one more question? Anything else? Okay, then let's just sit for a minute. I call this digestion meditation. So just think about what you heard, and think about how you can take it home and make it part of your life. And then let's rejoice that we were able to spend the evening together doing something really useful and meaningful and thinking about important topics. Let's rejoice that we were able to do that together with a group of people. And let's rejoice that all the positive energy, what we call merit, that we created as individuals and as a group. And then think of all that energy as a light at our heart and send that out into the universe. So that by virtue of what we've done together this evening, it can have a positive effect on the world. And send out your compassion to living beings. And know that when you work for social change, anger is not the only motivation to have. Compassion is a much more reliable motivation to work for social change. And so send your compassion out to living beings.